All right, today we're going to dive into one of the most ancient, most powerful spiritual ideas in the scriptures, the altar. But we're going to look at it through a lens you might not have considered before, not just as a place for ritual, but as a place of, well, a transaction. Let's get into it. All through the Old Testament, when people had this deep, urgent need to connect with God, they didn't just sit around and hope for the best. No, they took action. They physically built something, a designated spot where they could meet with the divine. And that something was an altar. But what exactly is an altar? For a lot of us, a pretty specific and maybe kind of limited image pops into our heads. So in this first part, we're going to push past that common idea to find out what's really going on. Let's be honest, when you hear the word altar, what do you see? Probably a pile of stones, right? A place for animal sacrifices. And look, that's definitely part of the story, but it's not even close to the whole picture. So what if an altar is way more than that? What if its real purpose is less about the ritual itself and more about a relationship? What if it actually shows us a fundamental principle of how the spiritual world even works? That's the question we're digging into today. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to kind of reframe our thinking. So let's stop picturing the altar as just some old religious thing and start seeing it as something way more dynamic. Think of it as a heavenly business table. Okay. This is the core idea right here. The altar acts as a designated place for a transaction. It's the meeting point between heaven and earth where our visible world can actually engage in a divine exchange with the invisible one. Think of it like this. At this table, the physical world, the stuff you can see and touch, comes into direct contact with the spiritual, invisible world. You put something on the table, and in return, God gives something back. A swap happens. So how does this heavenly business deal actually work? Well, once we look at the details, you'll see exactly why it's the single best deal you could ever possibly imagine. The process is actually pretty straightforward. First, you place something valuable on that altar. Now that could be your food when you fast, it could be your finances when you tithe, or it could be your time and your energy when you serve other people. And then God gives something back. But this is where the beautiful mystery comes in. The spiritual math here, it makes absolutely zero sense from our human point of view. It's completely, wonderfully rigged in your favor. This is the heart of the transaction. You place temporary things on the altar. Your money, your time, your physical desires. All stuff that fades away, right? In return, what you get back from God is eternal. Things like spiritual authority, divine protection, a deeper connection to His kingdom. And that's exactly why the source material calls it the best business deal you'll ever make. You are literally trading your rags, the temporary fading stuff of this world, for His eternal riches. So it makes sense then that you can actually measure your spiritual growth by what you're willing to put on that altar. An immature faith, it holds on to everything tightly. But a mature faith, a faith like Abraham's, is willing to place whatever God asks on that table because it trusts the divine exchange. Now, we've got to be super clear about this. Not everything about faith is a transaction. God's love, for example, you can't earn it. It is a free gift, period. Same with forgiveness. That price was paid in full by Jesus on the cross. These are gifts, not trades. But understanding this altar principle is absolutely key to unlocking other parts of our spiritual growth. But, and this is a big but, we have to be aware. Just as God offers this incredible transaction, the Bible warns us that there's an enemy who offers a counterfeit deal. And understanding that counterfeit is a critical warning for all of us. The scriptures are pretty clear. Satan has a business table of his own. But it's not a real business. It's a scam. It's designed to look like a good deal on the surface, but it always leads to ruin. And when you put the two deals side by side, wow, the contrast couldn't be more shocking. God's deal is give up the temporary to get the eternal. The enemy's deal is the tragic opposite. Give up your eternal and get temporary junk in return. So what's on His table? What does He ask for? Well, He asks for the things with eternal weight, your integrity, your destiny, your very soul. And what does He offer you for them? Things that disappear in a puff of smoke, a moment of pleasure, a little bit of fame, a quick hit of pride. The ultimate example of this, of course, is Jesus in the wilderness. Satan offered Him all the kingdoms of the world, all that temporary power and glory for the price of His eternal worship. Jesus saw the scam for what it was, and He refused the bad deal. And so should we. So this brings it all right back home, doesn't it?
This whole idea moves from being ancient history to being a very present, very personal question for you and me.
The principle leaves us with this really powerful image. It's just impossible to fully grab hold of the eternal blessings God has for you if your hands are already full, clutching on to the temporary things of this world. Something has to be let go. Something has to be placed on the altar. And that really leads us to the final, most important question. It's not about if an altar exists. It's about how you're going to use it. When you look at your life, your resources, your time, your ambitions, what will you place on the altar?